I invited Dorian, who I only met face-to-face for the first time today, but we've been corresponding via a mutual friend and via LinkedIn. But like a lot of creative directors, Dorian tried a number of things before he arrived where he is. He studied cultural anthropology and child psychology at Lee University before moving on to communication design at my alma mater, Carnegie Mellon, and then Maryland Institute of Art. He's worked in UX UI at AnswerThink, and he's been a senior e-learning designer at IBM. He did several years of user interface design for medical projects at Meditech Media and Shaw Science, where he became creative director. This past year, he became executive creative director for Equifax, leading a team of designers there on innovation, new product development, branding, and their interactive effort. So I contacted Dorian through a mutual friend a few weeks ago to ask if he would be interested in helping AIGA do our outreach to in-house designers, which is a national initiative and one that we have been slow to get off the ground here in Atlanta. And he not only agreed right away, but he actually offered to host it at Equifax. So we're very excited about that happening in the next month or so. And so I think the AIGA has a reputation for doing really well with freelancers and agencies, and perhaps less with in-house design. And so I think Dorian's presence and comments will be valuable for us. Please welcome Dorian Usherwood.
Thank you. That's a really nice thing you said. My dad's a pastor, so I like to hold on to the podium. So, you know, it's interesting, when David and I first connected, I had pneumonia, and I had it for 2 weeks. My wife was out of the country, and I had our 2 kids to take care of, so that was a lot of fun. But my daughter, this is her, she tells me just to shut up and make her breakfast, and that's literally, we were at the beach last week, and I was trying to have a heart-to-heart with my daughter, and she put her hand up and said, "Dad, I'm on my iPad, just make me breakfast." So, needless to say, this is a funny photograph, because when I talk to people at Equifax about creative services, this is the look that they give me. Anyone that's a designer knows that being in corporate as a designer is being in politics and being in graphic design. It's a really tough place to be. I've got a great opportunity right now where I am, where the leadership of the company has come to me and they said, "Hey, you create what creative services is for our company." And so for a $1 billion company, for them to come to a guy that likes to draw on walls and ask that is pretty cool. I got promoted recently to my job, and I was in a meeting with the CMO and then also the CEO and our Chief Information Officer. And I was looking around the room and I was thinking, why am I in the room? You know, I'm a designer. And what was interesting is the CEO stopped the meeting and he said, you know, "Why is Dorian here?" And I said, "Well, I'm asking the same question." So it turned out the CMO stopped the meeting. He said, "You know, we just promoted Dorian to head of creative services, and we thought it was important for him to be here." So the CEO gets up, walks around the table, shakes my hand, and he says, "I'm looking forward to working with you at a higher level," which was really kind of mind-blowing, because being a creative and being in that environment is tough enough, but having that opportunity was kind of shocking. So when I came into the role as a creative, executive creative director, there was someone that had previously had the department for 25 years. And so they had hired some folks, and I hadn't hired them. And there were some interesting personalities. You know, as creatives, we, on the corporate side specifically, you know, what we do is always last, right? All the important work is done first, and then they say, all right, let's kick it over to the designers and see if they can pretty this up, right? And so that's just the mindset of the designers that were hired. You know, they were used to prettying it up. They were used to being engaged last. And one of the really exciting things is, you know, the company's asking me, how can you be more of a strategic partner? And so I gave the in-house team, you know, multiple opportunities to kind of rise to the occasion. And they couldn't do it. One of them said, I don't want to be in politics. I said, well, corporate America is politics. Another one said, just leave me alone and let me design. I said, okay. And another one told our CMO, I don't do animations in PowerPoint. So, needless to say, I had scheduled this one designer to go to Palm Beach, to the #2 resort in the world, and spend, you know, 4 days with our senior executives and 250 of the top folks in our company. And they were there to, you know, be support for PowerPoint and any other kind of creative needs that the team needed. So when he told the CMO he didn't do animation in PowerPoint, the CMO called and said, Dorian has to go. That was on a Friday. I had to be there on Sunday. So that was fun to tell my wife, hey, by the way, our plans this weekend are off. I've got to go to Palm Beach. She said, Dorian, you're going to the #2 resort in the world. I said, yeah, okay, fine. So you talked about your ice storm experience. That was actually snowpocalypse. I got stuck in Palm Beach on the beach. It was really bad. So, you know, through that experience, I've really tried to help the internal team. I tried to help them kind of rise to the occasion. And it didn't happen. And it was so disappointing because we had such a great opportunity as a creative team. I put these folks in great, you know, positions where they could really be exposed there in meetings with key thought leaders in the company. And all they wanted to do was what they wanted to do. And so I went to my boss and I said, and she's the SVP of Corporate Communications, I said, you know, what I think is really important is that we evaluate how we're going to go from order taker to strategic partner. I think it's going to require us to probably have a new team. And that's a tough decision to make, you know, because you're talking about people that are parents, people that have kids in college, and you're having to make a tough decision to move them into a different part of their life without them knowing. And so we made those tough decisions and have a whole new team now. But what I did differently with the new team is the portfolio to me was like 50%. If you can design well, that's great. But in this environment, the other 50% is, are you a people person? You know, we've talked a lot about human interaction, and that's really it. You know, in a corporate environment, as a creative, you have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to articulate why this design is important, why you chose this direction. And so it's less about defending your design and more about educating the people that operate on the left side of their brain why this is important. And so having a new team, I then went to my boss and said, you know, we have all these agencies, people in the company, and we have 7,000 people in the company, we're in 18 countries. You know, people all around the company, they can go to any agency they want to and get work done. I said, this is insane. You know, someone will say, oh, we want a poster. Let's Google agencies that can do posters. And they onboard an agency and spend $200 on a poster that, you know, is going to be seen by, you know, 100 people. And so I said, well, we really need to get a handle on these agencies. She said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I think we need to do an agency alignment. Alignment is such a great term in corporate America. It means so many things, but I said, let's do an agency alignment. She said, well, you need to work with procurement on that. I'm like, oh, great, procurement? You kidding me? And if any of you know about procurement teams, I mean, their whole goal is to figure out how they can get the best bang for their buck for as little buck as possible, right? But I saw it as an opportunity. So I now have a great relationship with procurement, even to the point where they said, we're changing all of the printers throughout our company globally. We're changing to a brand new vendor. They said, what do you think creatives need? What do you think the marketing department needs? I said, well, we need, and this sounds really mundane to the folks that aren't in our industry, but we need printers that can print full bleed with all these different specs. And they said, really? I said, yeah. And I said, we need to have one in this building, in this building, in this office, in this country. And so having the opportunity to help determine what printers the company is going to have only came from me actually saying, okay, I don't know anything about procurement, but let me try and work with this procurement team. So I'm working with procurement. We've got 10 agencies. We're taking them down to 2 agencies of record. And there's going to be significant spend to the agencies. But what I said to my leadership was, instead of us just going to agencies, let's really figure out why we're going to engage an agency. We should only engage an agency if there's something that we can't do internally. So I created, with the help of Sella Consulting, they had this tiering system. And Sella Consulting, they work with in-house creative teams. And so there's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is big, heavy campaign. We need messaging frameworks. We need concept development. We need marketing strategy. That's tier 1. Tier 2 is that campaign is already in full motion, but we realize we need another tactic. So you know what? We need an iPhone app. So that's tier 2 because the creative has been set, the messaging has been set. We're just going to add something additional onto a larger campaign. Tier 3 is, hey, we've got that same poster you spent $1,000 that probably you could have spent $100 on. We need to change 5 of the words. That's tier 3. So by adopting the tiering system, I said to the business, you don't understand creative services, even though you think you do, because it is so subjective, as someone said earlier. This is how you should understand creative services. We've got these tier 1 big campaigns. That's where we're going to work with agencies. Tier 2 and tier 3 is going to be in-house, or I'm going to use freelancers. But guess what? You don't get to choose who those people are. And that's where they had been for so many years. They got to choose, you know, hey, my cousin likes to draw. Let me go and get them to write some copy for this campaign, right? That we're spending $500,000 on. But that's what the culture was. So now I've got this tiering campaign in place. They have to come to me before they engage any agency. And I get to choose which agencies we use, which is a great place to be as a guy that just likes to draw on walls, right? That's what my kids said, my parents said. I was a kid that just drew all over the furniture. So what's great is now we have a new team, we have a new system where we've got new agencies, but that still doesn't solve the problem of how do we help the corporate environment understand that what we do is important. Why is it beyond looking pretty? Well, if you look right now in Silicon Valley, not that I'm encouraging anyone to move, but back in the dot-com boom era, you know, 2000 to 2001, if you were a developer, I mean, you were a hot commodity. They'd pay you gazillion dollars to move out there. Well, right now, design thinkers are the hottest commodity. If you can be a design thinker and really understand what it means to be a design thinker, you're the hottest commodity. So to me, we're in the perfect opportunity right now in our industry, right? We've got corporations saying we need people that think differently than us. We still don't understand you, but we do need you for some reason. And we've got, you know, social media and all these other outlets and all these different industries saying, wow, design really does matter. I'm like, wow, I've been saying that for a long time. So in a corporate setting, one of the things that I've realized in this whole idea of order taker to strategic partner, you know, it is the whole, you said you were at FedEx office, you know, you drop things off, I still call it Kinko's, but, you know, let's drop it off at Kinko's and see if they can make it pretty or bind it. And so one of the things I said is we've got to change what we offer to the company so they don't think that we are FedEx office. So any kind of binding or printing, I said, we don't do that anymore. And they said, what, you don't? No, we don't. FedEx office is down the street. We have an account where you can go to Staples. Actually, I don't care who you go to. We'll give you a PDF and you can go get that done. Then I said, PowerPoint, we don't do PowerPoint. They were like, what? You don't do PowerPoint? I said, no, we only do PowerPoint for the C-suite and the presidents of the company. So it changed the conversation of, yes, we do PowerPoint for things that are really important, like our board letter or any of our CEO's messages, but then it's less about PowerPoint and us making things pretty and more about me being able to sit down with our CMO and him saying, these are the 5 slides that I have. How can we make them different? Not how can you pretty it up and add color, but how can we communicate this thought differently? And that's a great place to be as a creative. So we're starting to change the conversation, but what's interesting is now I'm being invited to meetings where it's not about the design, it's about the design thinking. Here's our problem, Dorian, how can we think about this differently? And so as a creative, every time I go into the office, I'm thinking to myself, wow, talk about meetings. I'm literally in meetings every day, all day long. And the way that you can help that person run a better meeting is create like meetingexperts@gmail.com and start barraging their inbox with better way to hold meetings. Shorter meetings are better. Create a meeting agenda. That's something I would do. But I'm actually trying to get to 30-minute meetings. But I'm in these meetings and I think to myself, wow, I didn't talk about design at all today, which is great. I still used the right side of my brain, but I also was able to use the left side of my brain, which is really uncomfortable to use sometimes. You knock the dust off and you're like, oh, yes, meetings. But that's really, from my standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, where I've tried to change the conversation. It's embrace the left side of my brain and figure out how to trigger the right parts of the right side of my brain. Because if you can do that, not only will you change the conversation, but you're seen on their terms, right? Of course, the corporate guy brings an iPad with a presentation, but those are the subtle nuances that really resonate with our audience, right? Whether you're in an agency or you're a freelancer or you're in-house creative, you're dealing with business people that don't know anything about design, but they think they do, right? You send them a great piece and they say, I don't like the color blue, or why don't you make this bigger? Where are you getting that from? What is your point of reference? That's one of the reasons why now our creative briefs come to every single meeting and every single review. And so it doesn't matter whether they like blue or not. As the executive creative director, that's what we decided to do. Not just because we thought it was cool, but it's because this supports what we put out in the creative brief. And that's a really key piece. We get so excited about creating something new and forget the business part of it, which really is the creative brief. It's not about, okay, we need to create this compelling design for X, Y, and Z. It's we need to communicate this set of ideas, try and convert this mindset to make a purchasing decision or a voting decision. That's really what we do as creatives. We are problem solvers, which is such a great place to be. So we're going through the evolution, trying to change the conversation. The next big thing was kind of around brand, People have seen creative services on everything, and I hate the word services. It just makes me feel like I should have a mop and a bucket, and I'm just, and a pencil, and like, okay, what do you need? What can I clean up, right? So I went to my boss and I said, look, I really think we need to change our name. And so at the end of this year, we're going to launch under a new name called Agency One. That name really went well when I had, unfortunately had to let go of my whole team because I was an agency of one at that point. So I got all these emails and people were teasing me, oh yeah, you really are Agency One. But a part of that was really to help change the conversation to, yes, we love agencies. We need them in appropriate places at the appropriate time, but we're your in-house agency. We are Agency One. We're your first point of contact. And so by changing that vernacular to we are an agency, we're embracing that. You can run out and get an agency, but we're the first one you're going to get to. That's helped kind of soften the interaction with the business. The other thing is, if you're in an in-house corporate environment, you've got marketing directors or marketing managers that you have to work with, and they, of course, think they're creative directors or art directors, right? Because they've gone to, the Home Depot and picked out some fixtures that went with their carpet and all that stuff, whatever. So I literally sent out a presentation and presented it to a few teams and said, you're not our customer. Our customer is the business. Our customer are the business units. Marketing team, you're our partner. And I literally had to put up a description from the dictionary of what partner means. So even changed the way I looked at who we were working with. I said, no, you're not my customer. I'm not going to treat you like a customer. Stop acting like a customer. And that's a tough conversation to have, because in their mind, as a designer, you know, you're here's my whipping boy whenever I need you. And so correcting them in meetings with other VPs and some SVPs and saying, no, you're not my customer. This is my marketing partner, really started to help change the conversation, because they were forced in a business setting to say, yeah, no, you are my partner. The last thing that I looked at is, you know, the system that we worked on. There was a system, I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's called RoboHead. It's a project management system. Sorry if you like it. It is horrible. It is the worst system I've ever seen in my life. But you know why? It was created by developers without designers. So it works really well from the back end, but the interface is terrible. So the person that was in my job before me, they basically came to the marketing department in the business and said, we're going to use RoboHead whether you like it or not. So first of all, you're going to turn people off because they're being forced to use a system. And then when the system sucks, that's even worse. So the next thing I looked at was, we really need to change the system. So I went again to my boss. So that's one of the best success stories, is having a strong advocate who's your manager, even if you have to send them anonymous emails about running better meetings. But I went to my boss and I said, you know, we need a new system, but it can't be a creative services system. It has to be a corporate communications system, which encompasses our PR team, our internal comms team, marketing comms team, brand, and events. I said, everyone has to use it, and it can't come from me, it has to come from you. She agreed. So she started communicating, we're going to change systems so that all of us can work together. And that really forces the whole partner conversation. The uncomfortable part is that this new system we're onboarding, called Clarizen, is really all about accountability. You know, the marketing directors or your, you know, marketing partners that have said, well, the designers just didn't get back on time. Oh, the designers are taking too long. Oh, creative, they just, you know, they just like to sit and play with their black rimmed glasses and, you know, hang out and smoke doobies and, you know. Well, guess what? Now we have a system that everyone sees, where we see right here. You said you were getting us the content on Friday and we didn't get it until the following Wednesday. So we can't be held accountable for this because this was your fault. Not that I want to point fingers, but I do. So now we've taken off the veil, right? Because there's this mysterious timeline that the marketing department always has, that they never really share the true timeline with the creative team. Now they have to put their timeline in the system that everyone sees. That's a tough one, right? Because as a creative team, now we really do have to rise to the occasion. We can't slack off and just smoke doobies, right? We have to actually do what we said we were going to do, and it has to be done right. And so now we have an even playing field. It's very uncomfortable. We're literally in the process of finishing the onboarding. But we invited the marketing department in, we invited PR team, we invited key stakeholders to say, let's design this together, so that there's no question, if there's something that you're not getting out of this, you were a part of designing it. And that's been uncomfortable, because it means more meetings, right? So the last part that really has kind of changed the way that we create and interact with the business is something I talked about earlier. It's that 50%. The 50% that has nothing to do with design. One of the art directors I interviewed, you know, he came in with a laptop, an iPad, and he had a book, right? He laid all this stuff on the table. He popped open his iMac. He said, can I connect to a projector? He had an iPad. And he said, hey, I'd love to show you my work. I said, if I hadn't seen your work, you wouldn't be sitting across the table from me right now. I said, I don't want to see your work. I don't want to hear about your work. I want to hear about how you interact in business, how you present work, how you take criticism, how you defend the creative brief. That's what I want to hear about, because that's why I'm hiring you. I'm not hiring you for a good book. That's the past. I want to know, how are you going to represent me in a meeting if I'm on vacation at the beach and my daughter's telling me to shut up? So that's been tough, because there are a lot of designers out there. The folks that I hired, they each have 17 years experience. But to find someone with 17 experience who's leaning on the side of being multidisciplinary is tough. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the web was getting really big and digital was becoming a big thing, you've got designers that really wanted to stay true to what they wanted to do, which is fine. And then you had designers that said, I'm going to dibble and dabble a little bit in this digital thing and figure this out. And so the reason that's important is because we're in a corporate environment, okay? People say Equifax. What does it mean to be a creative at Equifax? Well, most people know Equifax for 10% of what we do, right? You could buy a house, buy a car, get a credit card, you get a credit report. That's literally 10% of what we do. We manage information for 80 million companies around the world. So we're really an information technology company. Every major transaction that occurs around the world, we're involved in, right? And so that's a big deal. Well, you've got to communicate that. We've got a website, we've got videos, we've got social media now, we've got campaigns literally all around the world that you would want to look good, right? You would want it to communicate well, so that's why there's a creative team at a company like that. Giving yourself as a creative the opportunity to look at what you know and love what you know, but to really look at what you don't know and try and understand what you don't know is the best way that you can grow. And as a leader, being able to be in a meeting and say, I don't necessarily know everything about this big data thing you're talking about, but I do know enough about technology to understand why it's important and how information talks to each other. So that's why, when my wife and I finally put the kids to bed, and actually she's gone to bed too because I stay up a lot later than she does, I'm on my iPad reading stuff that has nothing to do about design. It's all about business and technology, and literally I spend most of my time reading articles about business. The Forbes app is amazing because there's so much you can learn about business and technology from Forbes. There's a great app called Flipboard that brings all these great things into one interface. But that's really what it's about. It's understanding your audience. I think several people have said that now. But my audience really, at the end of the day, are the people that I walk into work and talk to every single day that have nothing to do with design, that really are not creatives, no matter that they've picked out their fixtures at the Home Depot. They're not creative. They don't think the way that I do. But it's important for me to try to understand how they think, how they operate, because that's what's going to allow there to be some common ground. And that's tough for a creative, right? Because we want to create. We want to walk back and look at this masterpiece on the wall. Well, the 2 minutes. The masterpiece is this small now, right? And when you've got people interacting with interfaces that have no color at all, it's just black and white, there's still an opportunity for us to figure out how can that black and white be laid out the right way? What are the right pieces to incorporate so that the user really understands what they're interacting with? So, all that to say, I have probably 1 minute and 20 seconds left now. But as creatives, this is an amazing time for us. We are really thought of very differently than we were before, but you're gonna have to understand who your audience is and be really, 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 really passionate about understanding how they think and how they think about you so that you can communicate with them on a level that they would have never thought. And design thinking is the big buzz term, but I'm telling you, there are a lot of people that are not creatives who are calling themselves design thinkers, and they're getting paid a whole lot of money. But we're creatives, so we really can be and really are design thinkers. So, thank you.